What's it like to have a legitimate bird's eye view of BYU in East Carolina? Well, the man you're about to meet is going to have that exact thing on Saturday night.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking about BYU in East Carolina, but from a unique vantage point. The man you're seeing across from me digitally, if you're watching this YouTube, is Captain Morgan Curriden, better known as Mojo. He is going to be flying an F-15 over this game in Greenville, North Carolina. He's going to explain the connection, the intersection of BYU, East Carolina, and his involvement. We'll get to that momentarily. And we're also going to talk a little bit about what being a BYU fan living outside of what I like to call the Utah bubble and what it means to have BYU traveling where they're traveling during the season. And we'll get to all that ahead on today's show. And it's all brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can bet $5, and get $300 in bonus bets. If that first $5 bet wins, go to FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, Captain Morgan, which I think is an absolutely hilarious thing to be able to call you, Mojo. I love the fact that you are flying an F-15 in formation with a fellow BYU fan Saturday night over this game. It's a flyover for BYU in East Carolina. So let me just ask you this. How excited are you to be a part of this game and have that bird's eye view of this matchup?
Oh, I am so excited. This is something I've been thinking about and dreaming about ever since I was a little kid, doing a flyover for a BYU game, because I've been a BYU fan my whole life and I've wanted to be a fighter pilot my whole life. I grew up going to air shows at Nellis Air Force Base and seeing those flyovers, and then also going to, games at LaVell Edwards Stadium with my dad. And so, being able to kind of combine the two is it's the fulfillment of a dream I've always had.
Now, am I okay to call you Mojo? Like, I want to make sure I don't get you in trouble with the brass in the Air Force. Is that
No,
okay?
Mojo's fine. I'm still just the captain.
Okay. Well, so Mojo, when it comes to this, you mentioned the fact that you grew up a BYU fan. You grew up in the Las Vegas area because you mentioned Nellis Air Force Base down in the greater Las Vegas area. What is it when you look at this from a BYU fan perspective? How cool is it to have the Cougars going to Greenville, North Carolina, which is, we're talking a stone's throw away from where you have been stationed for multiple years?
Oh, I am so excited. It's funny. I feel like I've read a lot of comments on social media about fans that are mad that BYU didn't buy this game out, or they're mad that BYU is coming out here. And every single time I read that, I just want to reach to the computer and yell at them and be like, I have had this game circled for 6 years. I have been so excited for them to come to ECU, and I'm so happy that they're coming out here to the East Coast.
Now, as a fighter pilot, you have a unique distinction because you're obviously responsible to protect the rest of us here in the United States of America. You've been deployed multiple times. You are a fighter pilot by trade, and I think everybody who's watched Top Gun or Top Gun Maverick has an idea of what fighter pilot lives are like. So, Mojo, fill us in. What is being a fighter pilot like for the United States Air Force?
I would say it's like, the coolest 10% is pretty much what you see in Top Gun. It's the flying and the maneuvers and the dogfighting and the dropping bombs. There's obviously a lot of stuff that you don't see in there. And I think a great example of that is just planning for this flyover. The thing that everybody sees is the amazing flyover, which is totally worth it and awesome. But then, behind that, there's this whole mountain of paperwork that you have to fill out for the FAA and for your squadron and for your base. And, everyone involved has to approve it. And so I think it's kind of like the combination of the really, really cool stuff that you live for, and then all the other stuff that you have to do that makes the cool stuff possible.
Okay, you talk about the paperwork. How long of a process has this been to get this all cleared, get you able to do this flyover?
Yeah, I kicked it off in February because, like I said, I've had it circled for a while, so I always knew that is what we wanted to do. And one of the things that made it easy is just the fact that the base that I operate out of Seymour Johnson is so close to ECU. It's literally like a 4-minute flight in F-15. It's about a 30-minute drive. And so that means that we can take off and land from the base that the jets are based at, which for like the maintenance people here is a pretty, they still have to work on the weekend, which kind of sucks. And we're super grateful that they're willing to do that. But from a maintenance perspective, it's a lot easier for them to just launch and recover the jets from the same base that they're based off of. So that side of it was pretty easy. It was just the formalities of getting approvals from all the right people.
Now, when it comes to these flyovers, you mentioned it's a 4-minute flight from your base to get to Dowdy-Ficklen Stadium. Now, your actual flyover of said stadium is going to last seconds, quite literally. How much of it are you able to see / experience before you get back on the ground?
I'm excited to find out. This will be my first football game flyover. So I'll let you know. I'll let you know after the game.
Okay. Well, I didn't know this is your first ever time doing that's really cool. And the other thing about it is you mentioned the fact you grew up a BYU fan. You've had this game circled. You're based out there in North Carolina. As a guy who grew up, I know that Las Vegas has got a lot of members of the church, but it's not in the state of Utah. It's not in the Utah bubble. I guess I use that term loosely. What's it like to be a Cougar fan looking from the outside and watching a team that you've cheered for quite literally years coming to your neck of the woods, and the fact that you get to support them in person? Because I'm expecting that once you get back on the ground, you're driving straight over to the stadium to enjoy the rest of the game, I would hope.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As soon as we get back, we are jumping in a car and driving as fast as we can to get back to the stadium and hopefully catching at least a little bit of the game. Yeah, it's great. And honestly, one of the best parts about it is the majority of the members of my ward, the LDS community out here, are ECU fans. So it's been really fun kind of trash talking with them leading up to this game. And like I said, having it circled and being excited for what everybody knows is my team to come play their team, because they're really excited because of the church connection, BYU coming out to play, but they're going to be at the stadium decked out in purple on Saturday night. And all I can say is I hope they're very sad on Sunday.
Okay, I also got to ask you. So Mojo is your, I guess, is a call sign is what they technically you go. So how do you come up with your call sign? Is it assigned to you? How do you get the name Mojo?
Yeah, so the call sign is given to you by your squadron. It's something of a rite of passage. And the thing that most people don't know about call signs is they're typically given to you for something really stupid that you did. And most people outside of your community don't know what the story is. They just know what your call sign is, but you always know what it is. And so every time you say it and hear it, you remember that you're actually not that cool. And there's still a whole lot that you don't know. But when you're given your call sign by your squadron, it's kind of like your acceptance into the fighter community, and that's what people will call you for the rest of your career. I mean, even generals still go by their, if they're fighter guys that come from a fighter community, they will still go by their fighter call signs.
So you will be Mojo as long as you're in the Air Force, essentially.
Yep. As long as I'm in the Air Force, I'll be Mojo.
So how cool is that, the community? Because it feels like to me, and I'm an outsider, obviously, I do sports radio and sports media for my career, but my what I've observed from the general just armed forces community, it's a pretty tight knit bunch, and I think in the fighter community, probably even a tighter knit bunch there.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a really tight community, and even broken out into the different airframes, it gets even tighter. So like the F-15 community is pretty small. We only have 3 bases. And so I would say very likely that if there is someone that you know in the F-15 community, that I also know who they are. And then obviously the LDS fighter pilot community is even smaller.
How cool is that to have that kind of that type of connection? You mentioned the fact that, like, yeah, there are fighter pilots, there's F-15 pilots, but there's also members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints within that community. And you have that unique, because I know you were on the Wise Guys podcast, and Moby apparently is a convert to the church. He's gonna be flying with you on Saturday night. How cool is it to have that extra connection?
It's awesome. It's really great. I mean, you have to obviously trust anyone that you fly with. You have to have complete trust in them, and they have to have complete trust in you. But when you're flying with somebody that you know on that extra level because you go to church together, it's just, that much more special.
That's fantastic. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, what are you expecting Saturday night? You got a prediction for us? A bold call? What are you expecting to see?
Ooh, man, I am expecting our defense to show up big time. I think we're definitely going to be able to shut down the ECU run game. I think the big question on defense is going to be our secondary. I'll be very interested to see how we do against their passing attack because they are really, really pass happy offense. And then for our offense, I mean, it comes down to Bear Bachmeyer, man. Like what has he got to bring and how is he progressing game to game? I think, I'm certainly not an analyst, but I think I've definitely seen some good things and some things that make me nervous for Saturday night. Because the other thing about ECU is that they know that he's a true freshman and they're going to do everything that they can to try to rattle him and get his confidence off early on, because then that'll just chase him throughout this game.
Now, last thing from me is, do you have a score prediction for us on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'm gonna, yeah, I would probably say like a 14-17 BYU game, just because I think both defenses. I think the BYU offense will probably struggle a little bit early on, but our defense will keep us in it. They'll shut down the ECU passing attack, and we come out with a win. I hope. Fingers
Well,
crossed.
like you said, you want to be the one who's celebrating a Sunday morning in the church building versus having your other purple clad church members gloating in your face. So I totally get that. Well, Mojo, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been a longtime listener of this podcast. I know that you listened while you were deployed.
Oh
I've
yeah.
talked to you on this podcast. In fact, you were over and you called the sandbox overseas, doing what you're doing for our country in the United States Air Force. So I just want to say thank you for your service first off. And when I reached out to you about coming on the show, your reaction saying this it's a dream come true. I was like, no, it's a dream come true to catch up with you. If I'm being honest.
Oh yeah. Locked On Cougars has gotten me through some rough times. Let me tell you, it's great to be on, Jake. It really is.
All right, Mojo. Well, thank you for the time, sir, and best of luck Saturday night. And we'll be looking out for that flyover. All right.
Sounds great. Go Cougs.
All right, that is Captain Morgan Curriden, a.k.a. Mojo. A big thank you to him for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. We'll have more in a moment as you roll on right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. Now, DoorDash is here for you guys in terms of delivering what you guys need whenever you need it. It's time to look back with it almost being the weekend and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by our friends over at DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving you more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. Now, BYU was on a bye week last week, so I have to harken back to the game against Stanford. And I do want to give a special shout out to Logan Latui. Led BYU in tackles as an absolute force off of the edge for the BYU Cougars. When the pressure was on, he came through. And if you've been watching week after week, his performances have been pretty stellar so far this season. Logan Latui is absolutely on a streak. And just like Logan Latui delivered for the Cougars, DoorDash delivers on your Saturdays. It's DoorDash streaks you can save on every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season long. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. The promo period ends 11/18. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. A huge thank you once again to Captain Curriden. I like to call him Captain Morgan because that's a fun term to use. But big thank you to Mojo for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. And he's just a small sample size of what you out there in Cougar Nation have meant to this podcast, because he's listened for years. Many of you have listened since the very beginning. We're true everydayers. So thank you so much for all of the support. All right, let's talk about BYU's cornerbacks, and in particular, catch up with a guy who is responsible for BYU's defensive game planning, especially when it comes to going against a passing attack the caliber of East Carolina. That is none other than BYU defensive passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach, Jernaro Gilford. Now, Coach G, as many call him, has been around BYU as long as Kalani Sitake has been the head coach. He is one of the few guys who has been there the entire time through Kalani's run of 10 plus years now as the head coach of BYU. And Jernaro, all he's done is continue to prove himself annually that he is one of the best coaches, top to bottom, recruiters, everything involved with that on BYU staff. Well, I had a chance to catch up with him earlier this week at practice to talk a lot about what he expects going into this ECU matchup, but also more about his role as BYU's passing game coordinator, which is exactly where we started, what his role is this week in game planning for a pass-happy offense like ECU's.
In your position now as the defensive passing game coordinator, how much more difficult is it an opponent like this that likes to really throw the ball a lot?
It's very difficult, but it's a lot of fun to prepare for.
Yeah.
Knowing that we'll get plenty of opportunities to make plays and plenty of opportunities to get challenged.
Mm-hmm.
So,
are you confident that your guys are ready for an opponent like this? Because the two opponents you played so far are more running-focused teams, whereas this one's it's more passing game-oriented.
Yeah, you know what? Preparation brings confidence, and it's up to us coaches to get them prepared. So I think by Saturday, our guys will be prepared, and now it'll just be up to them to put it all together and make plays.
We saw on the Stanford game, we saw Trey come in place of Maury in the starting lineup. Is that a permanent thing, or is it a week-by-week basis on this?
Honestly, in my room, it's always going to be week by week.
Got it, okay.
That's just how we do it. If a guy's hot, we gonna ride the hot hand. So it's just that's how it's going to be. But at the same time, we play multiple guys every single game.
Sure.
So, I mean, 4 guys to play every game, you know what I mean?
And is it more so like a week like this week where they throw the ball so often?
Yeah, especially like now. They throw the ball, they go fast, so they're a tempo offense. They run 80, 90 plays and snap the ball quick. So at some point, guys might get winded or whatever the case may be. So we have to be smart as far as the coaching staff to get guys in and out and keep guys fresh.
Kind of the new rules in college football, those high-tempo offenses have kind of slowed down a little bit, but this is a team so really likes to push it. How difficult is that?
It's very difficult because, they kind of catch you off guard at times, and you can watch NC State. I have the privilege of my position coach being the DB coach at NC State. So, those guys, they go fast. They kind of catch you off guard. They throw quick game. They throw intermediate. They throw vertical. So, they can do it all. They have a big-time quarterback with a strong arm who can make every throw. So they'll make things difficult for you. So we have some preparation to do.
You talked about that quarterback, Hauser. He does have the ability to get it anywhere he wants on the field. How difficult is it to prepare for a guy like that?
Very difficult because there's no voided zones. You know what I mean? As far as to the field, to the boundary, or whatever the case may be, he makes you cover the entire field, which makes it harder for us. But at the same time, we have to prepare for everything, and guys have to be on their toes every single play, and regardless of where they are on the field.
When it comes to a game like this, going 2 time zones, is there any tricks to the trade in terms of adapting to it, or is it just like, hey, we're playing ball, let's go do it?
At the end of the day, man, we got to play.
Okay.
I mean, regardless if it's morning, night, here, Brazil, Mexico. I mean, at the end of the day, ball is going to be ball. We'll try our best to adapt, but at the end of the day, man, if you love this game, you live it. So guys are gonna get their rest, guys are gonna be prepared, and they'll be ready to roll.
What was the bye week like for you in particular?
For me, I got a chance to relax a little bit. I had to recruit, but for me, I had to recruit in LA. So
you're going home.
Yeah, so I got a chance to go home and see my mom and stuff like that. So that's always refreshing to get to go home and see moms. But besides that, we practice Monday through Thursday, normal week, and then Friday I had to go recruit. Friday, Saturday, and got back early morning Sunday and right back at it.
I guess I've had some people say that this early of a bye can be a bit of an impediment in a way because you've played the 2 games and you take a pause. Do you see it as that, or do you think it's part of the deal, we just move forward?
At the end of the day, man, it is what it is.
Okay.
I mean, 2 weeks, we get a bye week, get a chance to regroup, watch some teams play, watch teams make mistakes, watch teams make plays, and now we can come into this week knowing that we can't do those same things. You know what I mean? So that's how we took it. 2 games, get a chance to regroup, and right back at it.
Where do you see your group being the best right now as we kind of get into the meat and potatoes portion of the schedule, I guess as it is?
I think they're right where they need to be, man. We played 2 games, graded out pretty well. Now we have the biggest challenge yet. So it'll be interesting to see how my guys respond, as a group and as an entire defense, how we respond to a very fast team, a team who's putting up crazy numbers and all that good stuff. But again, preparation brings confidence, and that's something that our defensive coordinator, who I labeled was one of the best in the country, that's what he does best. So,
you call Jay one of the best in the country. What sets him apart in your mind?
Definitely preparation.
Okay.
Firsthand knowledge, like from watching him, just sitting back and watching the things that he does, man. His preparation is like second to none. You know what I mean? And just his knowledge of the game. He's been around for so long and been under great coaches. Been under Cal, been under Gary, been under Kalani, been the head coach for 10 years and had guys under him. Now he's back again. He's back with Kalani again. So just the experience he's had and the experience from the guys that he's learned from just puts him up there. And then his ability to remove his ego and listen to all of his assistants, regardless if it's the top assistant to a GA to an analyst or whatever the case may be, man, he removes the ego and is very, very open. And I think that's what makes JJ.
A big thank you once again going out to Jernaro Gilford for taking the time to talk with me one-on-one. And obviously a big thank you to BYU for coordinating that interview, Kenny Cox, Brett Pine, and the like. But as you heard him talk about the fact that Jay Hill, he is a master at being prepared. And that's the crazy thing about this, is that you have an extra week of preparation for BYU with regards to having watched ECU. ECU's got more game tape than BYU does overall this season. And if what Jernaro was saying about Coach Hill is true, well, BYU should be very, very well prepared for this matchup against the Pirates. And hopefully that pays off with BYU getting a W and snapping a 2-game losing streak to East Carolina on Saturday evening. All right, coming up next, we're going to finish up today's show circling back to a topic we addressed earlier this week. Now, I work with some guys in radio who have changed my mindset a little bit on BYU head coach Kalani Sitake being brought up in coaching searches like the one that mentioned him among those potentially to take the UCLA job. Why? Why, oh, why would he hear UCLA out? I'll explain why he maybe would do that, and we'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the NFL season is ongoing, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for every single game with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customer bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It's a fantastic offer. The best part is using FanDuel. It's a great way to stay in the mix, no matter how you like to bet, whether it's player props, building same-game parlays, doing live betting in games, over-unders. No matter what you're into when it comes to your sports betting, that is what FanDuel has for you guys. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup on the weekend. And it's quick, easy, and the best way is to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today. Use the FanDuel app, or go to FanDuel.com, I should say, to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, once again, $300 in bonus bets, all courtesy, once again, of your friends over at FanDuel. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who are that do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every single ride. They have more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else as of August 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat out all the details. We all know this, but Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model of every vehicle they have. You make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls with Mazda. And with all-wheel drive standard in almost every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost every season, as we all know here in the winter months. Like our players, we sweat because when you make every move count, impossible, because it's all courtesy of friends over at Mazda, where they like to say, move and be moved. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, another plug for you guys to do just that. Be a part of our growing group of insiders who are getting the inside intel and scoop on BYU news straight to your phone in the form of a text message. It's a great way to interact with the show and hope that many more of you be signing up in the days to come. It's just $5 a month that supports the show, gets you the insider intel you crave, and the kicker is you get 2 full weeks without having to pay a single penny before you're charged anything. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Click the link in the show notes below, fill out your information, and get in on the inside intel that you crave with the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right, before we go on today's show, I talked earlier this week about how I was just outright say that Kalani Sitake is not interested in the UCLA job. Now, I still believe that to be the case. And Kalani, when asked about it on Monday during his press conference, kind of hemmed and hawed and said, no distractions. I owe it to my players to be locked in on this season. And in some people's eyes, that left the door open that Kalani Sitake may want out at BYU. Here's the thing. I don't think Kalani Sitake is looking for the exit ramp to leave BYU anytime soon. He is very, very comfortable and happy doing what he's doing as the head coach at BYU. But a conversation came up on the KSL Sports Zone this week, the show that I produce on a daily basis, DJ and PK. There was an interesting point made by DJ that Kalani Sitake, if UCLA or literally anybody else at the Power 4 level is interested in talking to Kalani Sitake, he thinks that either Kalani or Kalani's agent absolutely should take the meeting, if for anything else, simply to get background details on how these other universities are operating with NIL, transfer portal, revenue sharing, essentially get a feel for the lay of the land with some of your compatriots or opponents in some people's eyes, and get a feel for how things are working. And maybe, just maybe, some of that intel can help you better be a better head coach, whether it's at BYU or, crazily enough, if you were to leave the Cougars. I was thinking about that, and the more I think about it, it's actually kind of diabolically genius to do something like that. Now, is it in your best interest to be have those prying eyes or those wandering eyes looking at other jobs? Probably not, because that forces people to say, oh, hey, is this guy locked in with us? I get that side of it. But knowing what I know of Kalani Sitake, he is a man of extremely, extremely upstanding character. He loves people. But he also, at the same time, he wants to be the best coach he possibly can be. And if UCLA can give some insight, if you were to take a meeting with them as to how Big Ten programs are operating, that BYU could then in turn, tricks of the trade, use to raise their profile for a potential next round of realignment, or simply put, just combat fire with fire and really stay on an even footing with the Big Ten. Why wouldn't Kalani Sitake consider talking to UCLA or anybody else of that ilk? I absolutely think he should consider it the more I think about it. Does that mean he's going to take the job? No, that absolutely does not mean you're going to take the job. And to use the real world expression, let's also acknowledge that many of us out there, if you have an opportunity to take a job that potentially could pay you more money, wouldn't you at least hear somebody out? I think all of us would. At least you'd go to that first interview or the first meeting and get a feel for things. Maybe it gives you some insight as to why you would want to continue pursuing said position. Or maybe it's like, you know what? I got a pretty good thing where I'm at, which is exactly what I think Kalani Sitake, his mindset is and likely will be regarding BYU. But it's kind of interesting to see how this is all going to shake out. This is not the first, nor will it be the last time that Kalani's name is brought up in conjunction with another job at the Power 4 level. In fact, the next Power 4 job west of the Mississippi that a head coach gets fired this season or shortly after the season concludes, I will put a lot of money on Kalani Sitake's name being mentioned in that opening. I'm talking whether it's Big Ten, Pac-12 for that revamped conference, Big 12, etc. There will be people who will always throw Kalani Sitake's name in the hopper because he is a well-known commodity. He's done incredible things at BYU, a job that other coaches, if they were to be offered the job at BYU, probably wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. They'd look at the parameters, the honor code, the academic restrictions, the religious nature of what Brigham Young University stands for. They'd say, you know what, I'm going to steer clear of that. Thank you for your interest, but no thanks. I'm good over here. Kalani embraces everything, truly everything that BYU is all about. He is as good a representative of Brigham Young University as you possibly could find, at least in my opinion. Like I said, I'm an opinion. This is my opinion on the matter. But I also understand that Kalani Sitake may talk to another university here or there. And by the way, a lot of those conversations with a lot of these coaches, whether it's Kalani Sitake or otherwise, very rarely get out into the open in terms of their agent talks to another person behind the scenes, and that never sees the light of day. It happens so often. I'm not saying that Kalani Sitake is doing these clandestine meetings, meeting with everybody and their dog in college football. That's far from it for me to be suggesting that. The point I'm trying to convey here is that Kalani Sitake might use it as a chance to get a feel for, okay, where are we at in relation to, I could say, UCLA, which may be a bottom tier Big Ten program, but where do we stand in relation to where they're at in this conference is expected to be one of the biggest, baddest conferences that's, in some people's eyes, trying to ruin the sport we're talking about. It's an interesting dichotomy, and I don't think there's a perfect answer to it. And like I said, there's probably a thought that Kalani should steer clear of talking to anybody because, like I said, it may cause his bosses at BYU to think, hey, is he really considering leaving? I don't know truly in the heart of Kalani Sitake what he wants and what he ultimately aspires to do as a head coach. But everything that all my interactions with him, both public facing, etc., everything that he does espouses what BYU is all about. He talks all the time that he grew up a BYU fan. He was lucky enough to play for one of his idols in Lavelle Edwards, play BYU football, and now he gets the opportunity to be the head coach at his alma mater. Very few people get to live the dream that he is living. He's got an incredible family. His dad, Tom, is an absolute prince among human beings. I love when I get to see, as they call him, pops around BYU football. He's always a fun chat to talk with him. And Kalani's created an incredible culture. And that's another thing that's attractive to these athletic directors or university presidents who would be making a hire at UCLA or otherwise, is they look at guys who can build culture, can bring buy-in from their players and elevate a program. That's what Kalani Sitake has done at BYU. And a lot of it's come through trial and error because, as many of you know, he's had ups, he's had downs at BYU. There were stretches there where it felt like he may not be long for the job. He has found job security in Provo, like I said, through a lot of trial and error, and he has learned on the job how to go about building a culture in an era of college football that has seen so much upheaval and change that it's really unprecedented in the 150 plus years of college football that are in recorded history. He has done an incredible job building BYU into what it is. And yes, I understand why programs like UCLA would look at him and say, hey, why can't we pick that guy off? Because there's a perception still out there, even though BYU is in the Big 12, there's still a small fish in some people's eyes as compared to being a bigger fish like a UCLA, even though I would look at it completely opposite because UCLA is in a really, really precarious position. So whether it's UCLA or insert team name here, Kalani Sitake's name will continue to come up in these coaching searches. And maybe, just maybe, he does take a meeting or his agent takes a meeting just to get some, background information that can help BYU better position itself in the college football universe. I don't see a problem with that. And I think actually, in some ways, it's downright brilliant. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. As always, thank you for all of your support. Truly, thank you to Jernaro Gilford and, more importantly, Captain Morgan Curriden of the United States Air Force for joining us here on the show. Great stuff, as always. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review, share this with your family and friends. Let us know what you think in the comments. You like it, you don't like it, or you're indifferent. Appreciate any and all interaction we get from the show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. Thank you for being an everydayer and doing it right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.